What's the creepiest thing you've witnessed camping in a forest or national park? Went camping out near McLeod, California, down Squaw Valley, with my ex, and that night, we both had the exact same dream of 8 black hooded creatures surrounding our car. Then one of them put both hands on the rear window of our car and looked in at us. The dream was extremely realistic. Everything was exactly the same straight down to the time setting, very early, about 5 or 6 a.m. Our visual perspective for each part of the dream, the description of the entities, even the feeling we had during the dream, which was a very cautious awareness of how powerful these things were, not quite scared, but definitely a little on edge. We started doing research and figured maybe they were some kind of forest watchers. Felt like they were warning us not to tamper with the woods. We did notice someone had littered some drug needles in the area, which we found to be really bizarre because we didn't think anyone really knew about the spot. Love that area dearly, it's where I spent most of my life, and it's truly an energetic and supernatural hotspot. Have not encountered such experiences myself, but forests in Thailand are very infamous for being haunted with spirits and angels. Spirits are often said to cause accidents, make a person invisible to the rest of the group members, hiding the person, etc., and angels are supposedly ones who punish misbehaving hikers. Also, you should never take rocks or whatever as souvenirs from temples' ruins. Many came running back to these places to return such items, claiming they were followed and haunted. Can confirm the PNW and NorCal have some spooky woods. I'm from way further south and never felt creeped out in my home woods, where the only things I worried about were rattlesnakes and spider bites. I was in the middle of nowhere in the woods. I was in NorCal one night and saw a row of lights in the sky. The people I was with called me out and said, "Hey, you're the logical one, give us some reasons for this." So I did. I said, "What about a plane?" But no, the light patterns were way off. What about a military plane or stealth bomber? Nope, wrong shape. What about a drone? Nope, too high up and it was silent. A satellite? Nope, not the right shape and not quite far enough away. The lights were very, very high up, and when I borrowed binoculars, I saw that the lights were in a succession of rainbow coloring like an LED light that fades in and out. It suddenly shot left, right, then directly upwards and disappeared. I had no explanation, and neither did my group. We were stunned. I went out crystal hunting with 2 friends in the PNW several years back and ended up lost for a while. The path down the mountain we were on was pretty straightforward, but somehow, I got drawn out into a thicket of rings of trees near a very camouflaged cliffside. What was weird though, was everything felt very heavy, and I heard giggling all around me right around the time I lost the path. Thankfully, my phone worked and I was able to direct my voice to my friends after calling to tell them what happened. I walked up to them after hearing their voices, and when we went to get back on the trail, they couldn't find it. Here's the thing though, they're both experienced hikers, campers, outdoors people. I hadn't strayed off more than 20 feet, and they were right near other crystal hunters on the base of a mountain. I heard those people too, but when we came back up, there was nothing. My friends navigated us down the mountain regardless, and we ended up all the way back to the main road. One of the friends said she heard the giggling too and just didn't want to say anything until we got out of the area. It was spooky. We almost felt like we'd been chased off the mountain. I was a stupid kid, 13 to 16, fascinated with hunting, but did not grow up from a family that ever hunted. I got my first BB gun and I went into the woods to see what I could possibly get. I remember coming to a part of the woods where it was a swamp, and there used to be an old farmhouse, which, when I was younger, like 2 to 3, used to be still standing, but at the time was nothing more than just a foundation chimney. It was dusk out, everything was gray in shadows, and I heard huge wings and saw a large bird land on the top of a dead tree. I saw its body shape and thought it was some owl or something, which now looking back, I love them and how majestic they are and stupid and probably illegal to hunt, IDK. I had a fascination with nature and lack of knowledge of hunting, but I was a stupid kid and shot anyways. As I saw the large bird drop, not quite sure what it actually was, it made a horrible screech on its way down to the ground, and I instantly regretted what I did. No less than a second later, the whole woods started screeching and howling with the most terrible sound I have ever heard. I heard in the trees around me, in almost all the trees, this weird screeching, but more like whooping, like 100 witches started howling and whooping started coming from every direction around me. I ran home, which was about a 1/4 mile from where I was, as quick as I could run. I only remembered this now and have looked up every owl distress calls I could find for my area, and I couldn't find anything similar to what I heard that night. Needless to say, I'm an avid outdoorsman, and I have the utmost respect for nature and the creatures that live in it, and would never want to hunt anything unless it were to feed me and my family. But that night, which I oddly forgot about until now, was one of the most eerie things I've experienced in the woods. Took my super skeptic BF on our first camping trip up to the Mount Adams area because I'd heard of some spooky UFO action in the area. We hadn't been dating that long. We saw some UFO action that defied his skeptic explanations in a dispersed spot, but nothing I hadn't seen before. Lights appearing out of nowhere, zipping along and then disappearing. Lights appearing and joining up, then disappearing. It was pretty satisfying to hear him say, "Yeah. I have no idea what that was." A few months later, we were camping with his dad and stepdad, who were both longtime veterans in the Forest Service and BLM, Bureau of Land Management. We mentioned the spots where we had camped, and his stepdad, who is not a believer of anything like this, and he said that the Mount Adams Gifford Pinchot area had been his beat for years. Without any prompts from us, he said, we were supposed to be up there looking for camp thieves. We never caught any thieves, but we saw a lot of weird stuff in the sky. When I pressed him for details, he got a little cagey, but did tell a really creepy story about how these big black logging trucks with no lights would appear and steal lumber in the middle of the night. So he and his partner staked out one night to catch them. Backed into the bush and had to sit in complete silence to let the truck cool down so nobody could detect them with heat or night vision goggles. The back of the truck was deep in the bush, meaning that only forest was behind them. Then, after over an hour of sitting in silence, these huge bright lights appeared behind them. From deep within the forest. So bright he could see the entire outline of the truck, the antenna, the spotlights and their silhouettes in the shadow. This was in the early 80s, so we're not talking LED lights here. He said he'd never seen anything like it. Then the lights went out, and everything was silent. No truck noise, no rustling in the forest behind him. Two things in one night, both involving the same friend, both involving my need to go to the bathroom. At around 10 p.m., I needed to take a dump. So I left our site to use the restrooms, which were about a 1/4 mile away. It's pitch dark. As I was walking, I see one of my friends who was with us walk from a path leading to an unused site onto the main path. This unused site path was a good 50 yards away from our site's path. My friend has a very noticeable and peculiar gait, way of walking. So I knew it was him. At multiple points, he turned around and asked, "Why are you following me?" About a good 40 or so feet ahead of me. I would reply, "I literally told you guys I was going to the bathroom," and question, "Why did you come from a different site?" He picked his pace up and I eventually lose him in the darkness. I get to the restrooms without seeing him, take my dump and upon returning to my site, where he of course is, I start asking why I'm being flirbo with. Everyone denies my friend even left. Okay, so they're fleabing around, no big deal. 3 a.m. rolls around, I wake up needing to pee. No need to walk to the restrooms this time. I'll just walk off into the woods a bit. As I walk back after my piss, I hear the distinct sound of a tent zipper opening. In the darkness, I can tell it's my friend. I can barely see but definitely hear him zip it back up. As I get closer to the tents, I see him more clearly and he walks a bit. He goes to light a cigarette. I can see his face in the flint strikes of the lighter even clearer when it manages to catch. He lights his cigarette, takes a puff and says, "Can you hear me?" Me. "Yeah, I can hear you, what's up?" Again, much louder this time. "Can you hear me?" Me. "Yeah, you trying to wake everyone up?" He kind of shakes his head at me, then turns and walks toward the cars. Maybe 30 feet away from him. Thinking I'm being flirbo with again, I go to follow and lose him behind a car. I turn the corner of it and he is nowhere to be seen. I'm pissed. He thinks he's so funny. So I go back to his tent. It's still closed and I can hear him faintly snoring inside it. I DK what it was I saw exactly, but it looked, sounded and walked just like my friend. I was slightly inebriated, but not enough to hallucinate. He denies he ever left his tent or went through the woods ahead of me. I went camping with my now BF in the Shenandoah National Park in Virginia October 2017. We hiked for a while and set up camp. Once it was dusk, I went back to the car to get some blankets. It was pretty creepy because the fog started to roll up the mountain and it kind of looked like something out of a horror film. I had a flashlight with me, but I didn't end up using it for whatever reason. Relevant later. Our tent door faced a path And when we were trying to sleep, I had rolled over to face it. There was a bright light coming from down the path, but it was weird because it was different than a flashlight. For one, there was no beam. It was just a circle of light. Secondly, if I turned and looked away with my head, it would vanish and there would only be complete darkness, hence the lack of flashlight beam. However, if I didn't look directly at it but still faced it and looked away with my eyes only, it would change shape. Think of moving positions while looking at an illuminated tunnel. The shape of the tunnel light changes. That's basically what it looked like when I moved my eyes. Also, hopefully that makes sense. Weird in general, but the most bizarre part was that I only saw it with my eyes closed, and we were inside a tent. What's more is that it was so bright, I could not keep my eyes closed when I faced that direction. I could see it for about 5 minutes, and then it inexplicably vanished. BF did not see it, but I saw it 2 more times throughout the night. The next day, I mentioned how weird it was and asked him again if he saw it. He said he didn't see it at that time, but he said he saw a light come up the mountain while I had left to get the blankets from the car. He thought it was me, but when 5 to 10 minutes passed and I didn't show, he realized that whatever he saw wasn't me. It's possible that whatever my BF saw could have been another hiker, but I doubt it because either my BF or me would have seen someone on the path. I don't think someone in their right mind would also leave the path because it was a very steep mountain and the area around the paths were super dense with bushes and trees and very rocky. So, it's unlikely someone would walk through it, especially after the sun went down, even if they did have a flashlight. I also do not know if the light he saw looked unusual like what I saw or if it was a normal flashlight. As for what I saw, I have no idea. All I know is that it physically hurt my eyes when I looked directly at it, but that I only saw it when they were closed. I was on a backpacking trip in the Manistee National Forest with my Boy Scout troop. We were several miles deep in the woods, all zipped up in our tents for the night when the noises started. That night, I heard ungodly noises that scared me half to death. Screams, shrieks, and calls echoed from deep within the dark forest. The noises lasted for what seemed like hours and were only interrupted by what sounded like a baseball bat violently striking a tree. The next morning, not a word was spoken about the night before, except by the assistant scoutmaster. I distinctly remember him saying something to the effect of, "Those were some high-pitched coyotes last night." Later that day, while continuing along the trail, we encountered a solo hiker passing in the opposite direction. He paused to question our scoutmaster. He asked if our troop had been causing a ruckus or making noises in the woods. He was quite agitated as he had been kept up all night by noises. He even said he yelled at them to stop, but to no avail. Our scoutmaster explained to him that it wasn't us and we continued along the trail. Year later, I found a YouTube video of strange noises recorded from that same forest. The whole event and then the small synchronicities surrounding it have made me more curious but also cautious about what could be out there in our own backyards that we have no idea about. When I was younger, my family used to own a camp in the deep outskirts of Powers, Michigan. It was a hand-built log cabin with no indoor plumbing or electricity. Mainly used for hunting, but my dad decided we'd spend our spring break there. Fast forward to the first couple nights. It had an upstairs loft where there were 4 to 5 beds scattered along. My sister and dad were snoring, and they were loud. I couldn't sleep. I was on my iPod Nano, throwback to 2008, playing games. Right as I felt myself getting more tired, I heard this loud buzzing sound from above. It vibrated the walls. I looked up out the skylight expecting a plane or an aircraft passing, but instead, I saw this weird assortment of colors. Kind of like if you've ever seen a transformer explode, that rainbow flash. That's how it resembled. And it entirely covered the glass, almost like it was coming closer. I panicked and threw a pillow at my dad to wake him up. As soon as I did that, it disappeared. Again, this was the middle of nowhere. We had no electricity, only generator, but it was off and no plumbing. I still can't explain this experience to this day.